家好，我们是第3组。那今天呢，要来跟大家介绍的是《Iliad》当中的第22卷。那组员呢，有我杨文秀、杨美琪、秦伟乔以及林子怡。那这个呢，是我们稍等会介绍到的部分。首先呢，由我来先跟大家报告说这卷书中的第1到110行的部分。我们先来看到场景的设定。在故事一开始呢，特洛伊的士兵们已经精疲力竭地靠在城墙上休息，而城外的希腊军队呢排列整齐，准备进攻。在此同时呢，已被命运注定死亡的 Hector 正在被 Achilles 追逐。在追逐的过程中呢 ，Apollo 将 Achilles 引开，这让Achilles 感到非常的愤怒，因为他错失了攻打特洛伊的机会。随后 Achilles 重新集中注意力向特洛伊冲去。Peleus 也就是 Hector 的父亲，他目睹了 Achilles 的靠近，他的心中充满了不安以及恐惧。Peleus 呢恳求 Hector 不要独自面对 Achilles， 因为他深知他的儿子不是 Achilles 的对手。他劝说 Hector 回到城内以拯救特洛伊人。接下来呢，Hecuba 也就是 Hector 的母亲，她也接着加入了劝说。在劝说的过程中呢，她解开了他的衣襟，露出了他的胸膛，恳求说呢，儿子不要去跟 Achilles 战斗，因为如果 Hector 战死， Hecuba 无法为他哀悼，甚至没办法好好收尸，因为他的尸体会被狗或是秃鹫啃食。那尽管呢 Hecuba 跟 Peleus 这么极力的劝说， Hector 依旧不为所动，决心与 Achilles 一战。那接下来呢，是我个人一点点的分析，就是 Peleus 的部分。那 Peleus 呢，不只是 Hector 的父亲，也是特洛伊的国王。那他在劝说他儿子的这个部分的时候，他不是以一个统治者或是军事领袖的身份对 Hector 说话，是以一位非常害怕失去儿子的父亲来跟他进行劝说。那他的恳求呢，充满了父爱以及焦虑。我觉得呢，这个部分蛮反映了伊利亚的人物他们的脆弱性以及人性的一面，就是即使是国王也会遭受到个人的悲伤以及恐惧。那接下来呢，是我想要跟大家分享的部分。我相信呢，蛮多人读到的时候也是有一点感到问号的，就是 Hecuba 在说服 Hector 的时候，为什么要袒露胸膛？就是你设想一下，你的母亲在劝说你的时候袒露了她的胸膛，这个画面应该是蛮有趣的。那我上网查了一下呢，袒露胸膛呢是母亲的养育象征，因为母亲袒露胸膛呢是一种极具情感力量的行为，象征着母亲哺育儿子啊女儿的经历。那想透过这种行为呢，提醒 Hector 说，你也曾经是透过我哺育成长的孩子，那你现在正处于即将面对死亡的部分。那 Hecuba 呢，希望他可以激起 Hector 的情感，唤起呢他对母亲的爱与感恩，试图以母子的亲情打动他，唤起他对生命啊家庭的珍惜，避免单纯为了荣誉而牺牲自己的生命。那我的部分到此结束，那接下来呢，就请那个 Lavinda 来为大家继续做解说。
I'm number 45, and I'm going to continue on the second part of our group's presentation. So in the summary of line 111 to 264, I divided my parts into 3 parts, which includes Hector's internal conflict and the desperate chase of Hector and Achilles, also with the deceptions of Athena. So in the first part, where there's internal conflict, where Hector feels guilty for the losses of his decisions that he had caused, he knows that if he dies, people will blame him. So he decided to face Achilles. He chose his honor over his own safety. And this shows that he has deep sense of responsibility and pride. And the second part, which is the desperate chase, where Hector tries to flee, but Achilles relentlessly chases him. So they race around Troy's walls as the gods watches, and Zeus seals Hector's fate by showing that even great warriors can't escape destiny. And the last part is where Athena decepted Hector, where he disguised as Hector's brother, and Athena convinces him to stop running and just start fighting. By trusting her, Hector then prepares to face Achilles, but he is unaware that this deception leads to his tragic end. And there are also 3 key scenarios that I concluded, where there's Hector's dilemma, the chase, and divine intervention. So in the first Hector's dilemma, Hector debates whether to retreat or to fight Achilles, choosing honor over survival despite his fear of being judged by his people. So he feels guilty and responsible for the soldiers who have died, right? And he knows that he can't run away because it would make him look weak. So even though he is scared, he decides that the only way to keep his honor is to face Achilles in the battle, even if it means that he might get killed. And as Achilles chases Hector around the walls of Troy, this chase becomes a very strong symbol of life and death. Hector, who was once a brave warrior, now feels very terrified and desperate. And this shows the struggle between fate and the choices humans make as he runs for his life from his powerful enemy. And the gods at this time are watching them closely. Zeus is even thinking about, what will happen to Hector? Then Athena comes in. She disguised herself as Hector's brother, and she encourages Hector to stop running and just stand and fight. But this moment shows how the gods can influence what people do and sets up the exciting showdown between Hector and Achilles. And here are some quotations from the main key events and scenarios. So the first quotation we got is, "Now what? If I take cover inside, Polydamas would be the first to reproach me. I can't face the Trojan men and women now. I can't bear to hear some lesser men say, Hector's trusted his strength and lost the army." This is referring to Hector's internal conflict. And the analysis on this is that Hector feels guilty and worried about his past choices. He knows that many of his men have died, and he fears what others will think if he runs away. And this shows how much honor and pride matter in the warrior culture. The second quotation we have about the chase. "So Achilles swooped and Hector trembled in the shadow of Troy's wall." The analysis on this is how the chase represents Hector's desperation as he tries to escape his fate. And Achilles is like a powerful predator. He's chasing him down. And this imagery of a falcon after a dove shows how Hector is being hunted by death, emphasizing the struggle between fate and free will. And the last quotation we have is the divine intervention, where it says, "Zeus, think you now, gods, and take counsel whether we should save him from death or deliver him into Achilles' hands, good man though he be." And the analysis that we got is that the gods are involved in humans' lives, discussing Hector's fate. Zeus cares about Hector, and he's showing the complicated relationship between gods and people. And when Athena disguises herself as Hector's brother to help him, this highlights how gods can manipulate humans to achieve their own goals, increasing the tension before the big battle.
Hello everyone, I'm Jimmy. Now I'll make a summary about Iliad Book 22 from lines 265 from 403. In this part, it's all about the final duel between Achilles and Hector. And I also divided this part into 6 sections. So the first part, that Hector stands alone outside the walls of Troy, facing an imminent confrontation with Achilles. Knowing that the Achilles is approaching, Hector briefly contemplates making peace, offering to return Helen, and agreeing that the victor should return the loser's body for a proper burial. However, as Achilles approaches, Hector's fear takes over, but he ultimately decides to stand and fight. Then, as the duel begins, Hector throws his spear, but is deflected by Achilles' armor, Realizing he is at a disadvantage, Hector asks his brother Deiphobus for another spear. However, he was tricked. His brother is not really there. And then it's turned to Achilles. He then hurls his spear with deadly accuracy, striking Hector in the neck. Hector failed. And then he pleads with Achilles to return his body to Troy for an honorable burial. However, Achilles is still enraged over the death of Patroclus, coldly refuses, vowing to leave Hector's body to be devoured by dogs and vultures. And through this passage, it concludes with Hector's death and Achilles' triumph, and also focusing on the themes of honor, revenge, and the inevitable fate of the warriors. Now let's turn to some scenarios and events. So the first part is all about the Hector's attempt at a pact. It's from lines 281 to 285. With all the gods as witness, and is to promise you do the same. In this part, Hector, facing the realization that one of them will die, appeals to Achilles for an honorable pact. He proposes that the victor should allow the vanquished a proper burial. This reflects the values of the time where even enemies could agree to respect dead. And another part is about Achilles' refusal and revenge. It's from line 383 to 393. It's about there is no one and nowhere to keep the dogs of the head, to dogs and birds will eaten every last crab. And in this part, we can see that Achilles coldly refuses Hector's request, driven by unrelenting rage. However, Hector's death is part of his regenesis. This shows Achilles' descent into a state of relentless fury, prioritizing revenge over the moral and cultural codes of honor. And this is the end of my part.
Hello, my name is Qingwei Qiao. Today I'm going to talk about the passage from Homer's Iliad, Book 22, from line 404 to 575. This part basically narrates the tragic aftermath of Hector's death at the hands of Achilles. After slaying Hector, Achilles, driven by rage and grief over the death of his friend Patroclus, dishonors Hector's body by dragging it behind his chariot. The Greek soldiers mock Hector's corpse, contrasting his current helplessness with his past strength as Troy's greatest warrior. Meanwhile, in Troy, Hector's family is plunged into deep sorrow. His parents, King Priam and Queen Hecuba, are devastated, with Priam wanting to confront Achilles in a desperate plea. Hector's wife, Andromache, unaware of his death, prepares for his return from battle. When she learns the truth, her grief is overwhelming. She mourns not only her husband but also her son, Astyages, who will now grow up fatherless and face a grim future without protection or status. The passage highlights themes of revenge, loss, and the impact of war on families. Achilles' brutal treatment of Hector's body contrasts with the deep mourning in Troy, underscoring the human cost of the conflict. Hector's death marks the beginning of the end for Troy, as he was the city's greatest defender. Now, let us reflect on the tragic events surrounding Hector's fall and Achilles' worth. Achilles, a warrior driven by both glory and grief, accepts his fate with indifference. Yet his heart remains bound by deep personal sorrow for his fallen friend Patroclus. His action, especially the desecration of Hector's body show the terrible consequences of unchecked vengeance. Achilles' desire to dishonor Hector, dragging his body through the dust, reveals how war can strip away basic respect for even the greatest of enemies. But war's cost doesn't stop with warriors. Priam's heartbreaking plea to Achilles reminds us that in battle, the suffering of the living can be greater than the dead. Hector's wife, Andromache, and their son, Ascaniax, now face a future of grief and deprivation. Her mourning for her husband extends to the loss of her son's future, as he foresees a life filled with scorn and hardship, a boy left fatherless by the cruel fate of war. Through these moments, we are reminded of the immense human toll that war takes, not just on the battlefield, but in the lives of those left behind. We are urged to remember the importance of empathy, even in times of conflict, and to honor the shared humanity that connects us all. And this is the task assignment list. And that is it. Thank you, everyone.